All right, let's dive into Patagonian wines. I know you're looking to go beyond Malbec, and we've got some interesting stuff to help with that. We'll be looking at excerpts from Patagonia, Terra de Vinos Extremos, Guia Enologico, which seems to be a guide to Patagonian wine, our goal. To figure out what makes Patagonia's terroir so unique, what grapes they're growing, and give you some knowledge to impress your wine-loving friends.
Patagonia's wines are interesting because they sort of thrive on adversity. It's a region of extremes, vast landscapes at the southern tip of South America. You'd expect incredible wildlife, maybe, but not necessarily great wines.
It is kind of paradoxical, this rugged landscape making these refined wines. It makes you curious.
What's fascinating is those harsh elements are actually key to its winemaking. The tough climate makes the vines adapt, dig deep, and that struggle gives you concentrated flavors and wines with a sense of place.
So it's like the vines are reflecting the spirit of Patagonia.
Exactly. It shows how terroir, that mix of climate, soil, and geography, shapes the wine. And Patagonia's terroir is unlike anywhere else.
Let's break down what makes it so unique. We've got the latitude way down south, those long summer days,
Right.
more sun, more ripeness, right?
Exactly. But it's not just heat. The Andes Mountains create these microclimates within the region, making it even more complex. You'll have vineyards at different altitudes, different temperatures, and sunlight, and that impacts the flavors.
I've heard Patagonia is super windy. Does that play a role?
Absolutely. The wind is a double-edged sword. It helps prevent disease and strengthens the vines. Thicker skins, more intense color, more tannins in the wine. But it can be tough for the growers. They need special techniques and have to be on guard.
So it's like a balance between harnessing the wind and protecting against it.
Right. And then you have the temperature swings between day and night. Diurnal shift, it's called. Really important for Patagonian winemaking. Hot days ripen the grapes, developing aromas, and the cold nights maintain acidity, so you get balanced wines.
So these extremes, the sun, the cold, the wind, the winemakers battling it all of it working together to create these wines.
You got it. And we haven't even talked about the soil yet. Some regions have one main soil type. Patagonia has a variety. Alluvial soils from rivers, volcanic soils rich in minerals, even calcareous soils. Each one adding its own twist to the wines.
So you've got this diverse landscape, this extreme climate, these unique soils. Sounds like a playground for winemakers.
It is. And that's why they can grow so many different grapes there. I know you want to go beyond Malbec, and there's a lot to explore.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's talk about those other grapes. What makes them special in this region?
Let's start with whites. First, Chardonnay. Now forget those buttery California Chardonnays. Patagonian Chardonnay is different. It's all about elegance and minerality. Crisp acidity, subtle citrus notes. The volcanic soils make it almost salty, mineral.
So it's refreshing A and D complex, like the Patagonian landscape itself.
Exactly. Next, Sauvignon Blanc. But again, with a twist. It's not just grassy, it's zesty, vibrant with herbs and minerals.
So familiar but unexpected, showing off that unique terroir.
Absolutely. Then there's Semillon. This one ages gracefully, developing complex aromas over time.
I'm already intrigued. What else do we have for white wine lovers?
If you like Riesling, you're in luck. Patagonia makes some that might surprise you. Floral notes, but with depth and complexity, rivals Rieslings from Germany or Alsace.
So delicate and powerful at the same time, just like Patagonia.
Precisely. And if you like exotic aromas, there's Gewürztraminer, lychee, rose petals, a touch of spice, great with spicy food.
That's going on my list. What's our last stop on this white wine tour?
Pinot Grigio, but not what you'd expect. Light and refreshing, with citrus, but more complex thanks to the terroir.
It sounds like Patagonia takes these classic white grapes and gives them a whole new dimension. I'm ready for the reds. Where do we start?
Let's begin with the star, Pinot Noir. Patagonia is getting known for world-class Pinot Noir, rivals Burgundy in elegance and complexity. It's got fruit, acidity, but with a distinct Patagonian character.
Okay, I'm sold. But I know there's more to Patagonian reds. What else is out there?
If you like smooth and approachable reds, try Merlot. The Patagonian ones are fruity, well-structured, easy to enjoy, not overly complex, just pure deliciousness.
I like the sound of that. What about something with a little more kick?
Cabernet Sauvignon is making a name for itself in Patagonia. Blackcurrant, spice, but with structure and aging potential like a Bordeaux, shows how the region can make powerful yet elegant wines.
Okay, Patagonia is really stepping it up. Now, we have to talk about Malbec. It's the region's most famous, but how does it compare to other Argentinian Malbecs?
Patagonian Malbec has its own personality. Deep color, dark fruit, spice, but with a surprising elegance. Not as bold as Malbecs from Mendoza, for example. More refined, more nuanced, reflects the cooler climate and longer growing season.
So it's like Malbec that's been refined, polished, but still full of character.
Exactly. And lastly, for bold and expressive reds, there's Syrah. Patagonia's cool climate is perfect for it, produces wines that are peppery, smoky, full body.
This is incredible. We've covered whites and reds, each with its own Patagonian flair. But it's not just about the grapes, is it? It's about the people behind the wines, the ones who face the elements and create these flavors.
Absolutely. The winemakers of Patagonia are a different breed, innovative, resilient, and passionate.
I can imagine what it takes to grow grapes in that environment. What makes Patagonian winemaking different? What are some of their practices?
Vineyard management is key. Remember the wind. They use low trellis systems to keep the vines low to the ground. Water conservation is also a big focus. Drip irrigation and dry farming are becoming more common. And sustainable pest control is gaining traction. Many are using organic or biodynamic practices.
So working with nature, not against it, respecting this unique ecosystem.
Precisely. It's a philosophy that extends to the winery. Many are experimenting with fermentation, blending, and oak aging to create wines that reflect the terroir.
It sounds like exploration and innovation are big in Patagonian winemaking.
Absolutely. There's this constant search for identity, pushing boundaries, making wines unique to Patagonia.
Okay, we've talked terroir, grapes, winemaking techniques. Now let's talk taste. What do these Patagonian wines actually taste like?
Now that's where it gets interesting. Patagonian wines are diverse and complex, but there are some common threads. The whites, for example, are known for their crispness, purity, and acidity. You'll find citrus, herbs, and minerals, depending on the grape.
So they capture the Patagonian landscape, the freshness, the vibrancy, the minerals.
Exactly. The reds are all about elegance and restraint. They're not big fruit bombs. They're more subtle. Delicate red fruit aromas, hints of spice, silky tannins that make them great with food.
I'm starting to see what makes Patagonian wines so special. It's not just the individual parts, it's how they come together, the harmony.
Exactly. And that harmony is in the wines themselves and in the food pairings.
Okay, now you're talking my language. Let's talk food. What Patagonian dishes go well with these wines?
If you're in Patagonia, you have to try the lamb. It's tender and flavorful, goes perfectly with a medium-bodied Pinot Noir. Another classic is fresh trout with Sauvignon Blanc. The acidity cuts through the richness, the herbs complement the flavors.
Okay, now I'm hungry. But we can't all be in Patagonia tonight. Any pairing suggestions for those of us at home?
Of course. A creamy pasta would be lovely with a Patagonian Chardonnay. The minerality and oak would go well with the sauce. The acidity cuts through the cream. And for the adventurous, try a spicy Thai curry with the Syrah. The pepper notes and full body can handle the heat. The fruit balances the spice.
I love it. So finding those matching flavors and textures, whether you're in Patagonia or at home.
Exactly. That's one of the joys of wine, right? Discovering unexpected pairings and creating your own experiences.
Absolutely. But before we get too far down that road, let's talk about Chile. We've been talking about Argentina, but Patagonia is shared between the two, right?
That's right. And that makes things even more interesting. Both sides have unique terroirs, climates, and winemaking traditions. So you get these distinct but complementary wines.
So it's not about which is better, it's about appreciating the differences.
Precisely. It's like comparing apples and oranges. Both are delicious, but they taste different.
Okay, I'm really intrigued by this Patagonian wine showdown. But let's take a quick break. We'll be back to explore the wines from each side and what makes them so special. Back to our Patagonian wine adventure. Before the break, we were about to get into the wines from both Argentina and Chile. I want to explore what makes each side unique, like a friendly competition.
Yeah, it's like two different takes on the same incredible landscape. Both Argentina and Chile have their own ways of making wine in Patagonia, which means lots of variety for us to explore.
Okay, let's start with Argentina. We talked about the tough conditions, the wind, sun, and unique soils. How do those shape Argentinian Patagonian wines?
Well, generally, Argentina's Patagonia has a more continental climate, hot, dry summers and cold winters. That, plus the alluvial soils, makes for bolder reds.
So we're talking big, jammy wines.
Not quite. Remember, even with those conditions, Patagonian wines are known for being elegant. But the reds from Argentina are usually more full-bodied and fruity. Imagine Malbecs with lots of blackberry and plum, or Merlots with cherry and spice. They also often have a bit more tannin, a good grip.
Sounds like those wines are reflecting the landscape, powerful and full of character. What about the whites? Same thing.
To a degree, yes. Argentinian Chardonnay, for example, tends to be fuller than the Chilean ones. ripe citrus and stone fruit flavors. But Argentina also has volcanic and calcareous soils, so you can still find those mineral notes and acidity we talked about.
Okay, so Argentina has a nice range, from bold reds to complex whites. Now, let's hop over to Chile. What can we expect there?
Chile and Patagonia is a bit cooler and wetter because of the Pacific Ocean. That means the wines have less intense fruit and more freshness and acidity.
So lighter wines overall.
Not really. You can still find big Cabernet Sauvignons and Syrahs, but they're more elegant than the Argentinian ones. Think Cabernet Sauvignon with cassis and cedar, not a jammy fruit bomb. And Pinot Noir really thrives in Chile. Delicate red fruit, earthy notes, silky tannins.
So Chilean wines are more subtle, reflecting the climate and the ocean.
Exactly. And the whites are fantastic. Think Sauvignon Blanc with grapefruit and lime, or Chardonnay with green apple and minerality from the granite and volcanic soils.
Okay, I'm seeing the differences. It's amazing how geography and climate make such different wines. But say I'm at a blind tasting, how can I tell an Argentinian wine from a Chilean one?
Good question. It can be tricky, but there are some clues. First, the fruit. Argentinian reds tend to have riper, darker fruit, while Chilean reds are usually brighter, more red-fruited.
So blackberries and plums versus cherries and cranberries. Got it. What else?
Tannins. Argentinian reds often have stronger tannins, firmer structure, more grip. Chilean reds are usually softer.
Okay, so I'm swirling, sniffing, sipping, feeling those tannins. What else?
Alcohol level. Chilean wines often have a bit less alcohol because of the cooler climate. And don't forget minerality. Both sides have it, but the type can be a clue. Argentinian wines often have an earthy, almost salty minerality, while Chilean wines are more stony, flinty.
Wow, this is like detective work. So many little clues.
Yeah.
But beyond the technical stuff, what about the overall feel of the wines?
That's where it gets really interesting. Argentinian wines often have a sense of warmth and power, like the landscape. Chilean wines are often more elegant and restrained, like the cooler climate and the ocean.
Like two sides of the same coin, each showing a different part of Patagonia.
Exactly. And that's what makes exploring Patagonian wine so fun. It's not just about finding what you like, it's about the story behind the bottle, the sense of place.
I love that. Each wine is like a window into Patagonia. But let's talk about the people making these wines. We know they're resilient, battling the elements. But what else drives them? What's their story?
The winemakers are a diverse group, each with their own path. But there are some common things: a love for the land, a pioneering spirit, and a passion for winemaking.
So it's more than a job.
Definitely. They're connected to Patagonia, they see themselves as caretakers of the land, and their winemaking shows that. They're always innovating, experimenting, pushing boundaries, but respecting the environment.
I can imagine the challenges working in such an extreme environment.
It's not easy. They deal with strong winds, extreme temperatures, and limited water. But those challenges also make them creative and resourceful.
It's like they're always learning and adapting, just like the vines.
Exactly. And that's what makes their story so inspiring. They're not just making wine, they're creating something new, a legacy.
Okay, you've really brought these winemakers to life, but let's go back to the wine. We've talked about the general styles, but are there any wineries that really embody Patagonian winemaking?
Oh, definitely. There are so many talented winemakers.
Mhm.
But if I had to choose a few that stand out,
I'm all ears. Give me names, stories, inspiration.
well, in Argentina, there's Bodega Chacra. They're known for their elegant Pinot Noirs and their biodynamic practices.
Remind me, what's biodynamic again?
It's a way of farming that sees the vineyard as a living ecosystem. It goes beyond organic. It's about balance and harmony. Bodega Chacra uses composting, planting by the moon, and herbal preparations to improve the soil and vines.
So working with nature, using its energy to create something special.
Exactly. And you can taste that connection in their wines. They have a purity and energy that's captivating.
Okay, Bodega Chacra is on my list. Any other Argentinian ones?
Another one is Noemia. Also in the Rio Negro Valley, they specialize in Malbec. They have a minimalist approach, intervening as little as possible. Their wines are really expressive, showing off the terroir.
So letting the grapes speak for themselves, letting Patagonia shine through.
Exactly. And their story is interesting, too. A Danish woman named Noemi Moroni Cinzano founded it. She fell in love with Patagonia and planted a vineyard in the middle of nowhere.
A Danish woman making Malbec in Argentina. That's a story.
It is. She's a true pioneer, saw the potential, and went for it.
Okay, Narima is on the list too. Now, what about Chile? Any standouts there?
Absolutely. One is Casa Marin. They're in San Antonio Valley, right on the coast, known for their Sauvignon Blanc and other cool climate wines.
So crisp whites with that Patagonian minerality.
You got it. Their Sauvignon Blanc is legendary, so intense and complex, with citrus, herbs, and that salty ocean air.
Wow, I can almost taste it. What else makes them special?
They're also organic and biodynamic, and they really focus on their coastal terroir. They believe good wine starts in the vineyard, and they work hard for quality grapes.
Sounds like they balance tradition and innovation.
Exactly, and you see that in their wines. Elegant and expressive, with a real sense of place.
Okay, Casa Marin is on the list. Any other Chilean ones?
Viña Aquitania is doing great things. They're in the Meleco Valley, inland, and a bit warmer.
Yeah.
They focus on Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. Their wines are elegant, complex, and have beautiful minerality from the granite soils.
So a different side of Chilean Patagonia, showing how diverse it is.
Exactly. Viña Aquitania shows how small changes in climate and soil make different wines, even within one country.
Okay, I'm convinced Patagonia is a wine paradise. But not everyone can just visit these wineries. So for those of us dreaming of Patagonia, how can we try these wines without traveling so far?
That's a good question. The good news is Patagonian wines are becoming more available. You can find them in specialty shops, online, even some supermarkets.
Okay, that's good. But how do we navigate all these options? Any tips?
Definitely. First, ask for recommendations. Talk to your wine merchant. They can point you in the right direction. You can also look online, read reviews, see what other people say.
Okay, so knowledge is key. What else?
Remember that Patagonian wines age well, especially the reds. So if you find a good one, hold on to it for a few years.
Patience is a virtue. Any other wisdom?
Keep in mind, Patagonian wines are about balance and finesse. They're not big fruity wines, they're more subtle. So when you taste them, pay attention to the details, the layers.
It sounds like tasting Patagonian wine is about slowing down and appreciating it.
Exactly. It's about enjoying the moment, connecting with nature, experiencing Patagonia through its wines.
Okay, you've given us so much to think about. But before we wrap up, I want to mention something else about Patagonia. It's a sense of adventure, a feeling that anything is possible.
I agree. There's a magic to Patagonia, an energy that's exciting and inspiring. And you see it in the wines, the stories, the landscape.
It's like a reminder that there are still wild places where nature rules, places where people are tested and succeed, where dreams come true, and that's something to celebrate.
Absolutely. So next time you have a Patagonian wine, think about the story behind it, the journey.
I think a lot of people will be looking for these wines after this, but before we all rush out, let's take one last break. We'll be back with a special guest, a Patagonian winemaker, who will share their experiences. You won't want to miss it. Welcome back to our Patagonian wine journey. We've learned about the terroir, the grapes, the passionate winemakers, and now we have a special guest, straight from the source. Please welcome expert speaker's name, a winemaker from winery name and region of Patagonia.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here and talk about Patagonian wine.
We've been geeking out about Patagonian wine for the past 2 parts, and now we get to hear from someone who lives it every day. Expert speaker's name, what brought you to winemaking in Patagonia?
Well, it wasn't a straight path, that's for sure. I was actually in finance, feeling totally burnt out, decided to take a break, travel, and ended up in Patagonia. The landscape just grabbed me, the wide open spaces, the quiet, the energy. It really spoke to me.
So the spirit of Patagonia drew you in.
Yeah, absolutely. Then I found this small winery and tasted my first Patagonian wine. It was amazing. I had no idea wine could be so elegant, complex, and expressive of where it came from. I was hooked. I wanted to learn more. So I started volunteering at the winery, taking classes, reading everything I could.
That's incredible, like a true calling.
It felt like it. And then I got to work at a few different wineries in Patagonia, learning from the best. Eventually realized I wanted to make my own wines to share my vision of Patagonia through winemaking.
And that's how winery name came to be.
Exactly. It was a risk. Starting a winery in Patagonia is tough, but I was determined. Found a beautiful piece of land in the region of Patagonia. It just felt right, and I started planting.
You said starting a winery there is tough. Can you tell us more about the challenges?
Well, there's a lot. The wind is a constant fight. We have to be really smart about managing the vineyard, using low trellises and windbreaks to protect the vines. Water is also scarce. We use drip irrigation to conserve it, and we're always trying new things to make the most of what we have.
So being flexible and creative, working within the limits of the environment.
Exactly. You can't force things in Patagonia. You have to listen to the land, respect it, and work with it. It's a constant learning experience.
It sounds like you've gained a lot of respect for the Patagonian landscape.
I have. It's a powerful place, and I try to capture that in my wines.
I'm curious about your winemaking philosophy. We talked about terroir. How do you show the character of your vineyards in the wines?
For me, it's all about minimal intervention. I think great wine starts in the vineyard, healthy, balanced vines. You don't need to do much in the winery. I use native yeasts, and I don't fine or filter the wines. It's about letting the grapes express themselves, letting the place shine through.
So a natural hands-off approach?
Exactly. I'm more like a guide. The real work happens in the vineyard, the soil, the climate, the grapes, and a little help from us.
A balance of art and science.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Winemaking is both. You need the knowledge, but you also need to trust your gut to feel the energy of the grapes and the land.
We know you focus on wine type at Winery Name. For those who don't know wine type, tell us about it. What makes it special in Patagonia?
Well, wine type is a brief description of wine type. It's not as famous as Malbec or Pinot Noir, but I think it has a lot of potential in Patagonia. It loves our cool climate and makes wines with flavor profile.
You're a pioneer, championing a lesser-known grape in a region known for unique wines.
I guess you could say that. It's a challenge, but it's rewarding too. I like introducing people to new flavors, new possibilities.
What's the best part of being a winemaker in Patagonia?
Oh, that's tough. There's so much to love. But I think it's the connection to nature. Being in the vineyard, feeling the wind, watching the grapes ripen under the sun. It's amazing to work with nature like that, to be a part of something so big.
And the hardest part?
The weather can be a bit crazy. We've had frost that destroyed a lot of the crop, and the wind can really hurt the vines. It's a constant struggle.
So you have to be tough.
Yeah, you have to adapt, but that's part of what makes it great. It makes you appreciate the good times even more.
This has been a fascinating look into your world, expert speaker's name. Thanks for sharing your passion with us. But before you go, what advice would you give someone new to Patagonian wines?
I'd say expect the unexpected. Patagonian wines are full of surprises. They're not your typical South American wines. More subtle, elegant, nuanced, and always changing. So be curious, be adventurous, and see where your taste buds take you.
That's great advice. And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into Patagonian wines. We hope you've enjoyed it and feel inspired to explore this incredible region and its wines. Thanks again to expert speaker's name for joining us and sharing your story.
It was my pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring and happy tasting.